I'm on the way up. Yeah, been a long, long time coming, but I'm on the way up. Been a long, long time coming, but I'm on the way up.
Welcome to the channel, everybody. This is Phil back with the Professional Painter and Decorator. Now, you've seen the title, you've probably seen the thumbnail that's a little bit intriguing to you, and you've come in to watch this video because you want to know a little bit more about the paint that I've been testing and trialing. Now, this paint, I'll just lift it up, it's the Caparol, and it's the CapaFlow Satin. Now, this, depending on when you watch this video, will depend on whether this is available in the UK. Now, I've managed to be asked, I will say asked, I've been asked to try this paint out to get my thoughts on it, and I'm going to be honest, I've had to hold this video back from when I'm filming it. How shall I say it? I film it and I couldn't put it straight out. I've had to wait, but this is new to me. I've been asked to try this paint out. Can't mention any names. You probably know who I'm going to be. I'm not going to mention any names, but you probably know who I'm probably referring to, that said to me and text me. I'm going to say a friend of mine. He texts me and says, Phil, I'm going to send you some paint. Can you try it? See what you think to it. Give us some feedback and try it as a first time user, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I try and test paints out as they come out the can. I've not tried it before, so I'll give you my first initial thoughts. Now, you're seeing it here, it's the CapaFlow Satin. You're going to say to me, Phil, what can you tell me about it? Well, the CapaFlow Satin is actually a 1K PU paint. Now, the PU element is polyurethane, and the 1K is meaning that it is a single pack straight out the tin. You don't have to mix it with anything, and it is good to go. Now, what's interesting about this, it's a PU 1K, and that is meaning that it's going to be drying. I've done my research. It dries with the moisture that is actually in the air. Now, you know what the UK is like. We have quite humid, hot, sunny days. We also get rain, and we get a lot of moisture in the air, don't we? So I'm going to say this is going to dry fantastic because we have that environment in the UK. But joking apart, this is only an interior paint. I can't see any information that I've seen on the internet, and particularly on the Caparol website. Now, this is on the Caparol website, which is in German, because it is a German company. If you don't know about Caparol paints, they are a German European company, and you can actually get it in the UK. You can get this through various distributors now, actually in the UK. Price wise, I'm not going to say this one, but stuff like the Caparol PU Satin, PU Gloss are roughly around about 60, 70 pounds for that 2.5 litre can. Not sure how much this is, being a 1K product, a PU 1K product, but it probably sit about the same sort of pricing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the paint. I'm going to bring you in on Doris the door, because Doris the door, I've saved you a lot of time. If you can just vaguely or carefully see, there's a darker patch there. That's what Doris was actually painted in. It was a darker, a grey colour. Now, I wanted to see what the opacity of this paint's like. So I thought what I'll do, let's try it. Let's go a bit extreme. This is white. You can see on the back, I've just wiped it around. It is a white paint. It is a white satin. I would say probably the white satin of the Caparol range are, correct me if I'm wrong or right, about 20-30%. They're not a high sheen level satin. They're on more of a neg shelly satin finish. If you're wanting a bit more of a sheen level, you can look at stuff like PU Gloss, which is around about that 60% sheen level. So PU Gloss isn't particularly a high gloss level, but it is a decent satin finish. I would say that this will probably be sitting like a PU satin, round about that 20-30% sheen level. But right, I'm going on. You know what I'm like. Right, we've got a darker base there. And what I have done, I've actually undercoated the door with half primer. Now, I wanted to see what this opacity like is of this satin in white. So I've done half primer, and the tin is here. And this is a slightly light grey colour, something like a cornforth white. You might have seen it being used on previous other videos. So I've used that as my undercoat, really to see what the opacity of the white is like going over something that is that colour. You get the idea, hopefully. But what I've done for you, this morning I've been busy. I've coated the door out with the half primer. I've got the heaters on. I've given it a good number of hours to let it dry off. Now, I would probably say recoat time of your Caparol range is roughly that 2 to 4 hours. Depending on your conditions, you might have to leave it a bit longer. And I do say if you're coming into a final coat of anything, really, particularly Caparols, give the final coat a good 12 hours, recoat the next day. Just, that's my tip. That's what I'm going to say to you as my tip. But the undercoat was dry. I've gone in just early morning to lunchtime. I've gone in with one coat of the CapaFlow with a brush earlier on, and now this is nice and dry, and I'm going to be giving it a second coat. Now, with these water-based products, I do probably say to you, go with one undercoat and 2 top coats. Depending on the surface colours that you're going over, you might need an extra coat to help with the opacity and in brackets coverage. But this is brushed. You can use a brush, you can use a roller, and you can spray it. Now, if you are spraying this airless, it does say a 0.0008 spray tip. And if you are wanting a little bit bigger, it does say between that 8 and 10 spray tips. So we're looking at a 0.0008 and a 0.0010. So that's an 8 and a 10 spray tip. To put that in layman's terms, if I say to you a 208, a 210, a 308, 310, anything that sort of orifice size is probably what you'd be wanting to spray it with. You might need to thin it. I will say just trial it before you start adding anything to it. Airless is normally, you don't need to thin it, but sometimes you might find it is a little bit easier to spray if you put a little bit of water to it. If you are using HVLP, a 1.8 needle spray tip is recommended, and again you might need to thin that depending on your setup and your actual power of your apparatus. Now, it does say you spray it about 3 bar. That 3 bar, if we put that 3 bar into PSI, 3 bar is roughly around about 44 PSI. Now, if you're using that 1.8 needle, that should be fine because the needle is a little bit bigger, and that should get the paint through. Now, going back to the airless, now that is actually saying between 180 and 200 bar. Now, to put that into layman's terms, again, if we are looking at PSI, you're looking in between 2,610 and going all the way up to 2,900 PSI. Now, that is quite high on the spectrum when we start looking at doing airless spraying. I know we're all into trying to keep the pressure down, but some paints do need to have that bit more pressure. So just to be clear, if you are doing airless, yeah, be cranking it up slightly, and also even on that high pressure, I'll say high pressure, and I'm going to be saying HVLP. No, high pressure isn't necessarily the high volume, low pressure. But if you are high pressure spraying, which is probably off a compressor unit, you are probably looking around about that 44 to 45 PSI 3 bar. So that's it. You can spray it, you can brush it, you can roll it. Now, it does say if you are using a roller, get it on with a nylon roller to start with, and then you can finish off quite quickly, immediately, with a foam roller or a fine soft brush to lay it off. So please, just a bit of trial and error on that. I think that'll be a bit of a trial and error thing once you get into using this paint. But let's have a look at Doris. Right, we've got Doris here. I've just used just my usual Knorr Heritage brush, which is quite a soft bristle, to actually apply that. Now, the half primer does go on very nice. That is no issues whatsoever. When it comes to actually doing this newer paint, this CapaFlow Satin, I did feel it was quite thick to apply, quite a dense paint to apply. But saying that, let's just talk about the properties of this paint. It's a safe and easy processing paint to apply, excellent smooth flow, which I have to say it's not too bad at all. Now, it's got a particularly high scratch and impact resistance, so you know where I'm going to be coming with this in a moment. This will be the reason why it is a 1K paint. It is a high durable paint. It's chemical and hand sweat resistant. Now, if you don't know about this, and I've mentioned times many about saponification, water-based paints are affected by the hand grease. Now, the saponification, it softens up that paint and it goes cheesy. Now, if you've got some of these water-based paints that have got things in them to make them chemical and hand resistant, do you know what? That's the paints we want to be using as water-based paints. I'm going to say it again, you get what you pay for. The more quality paint that you go for, there's more chance that there is that PU element, that polyurethane coating element to the paint that you use that gives it that chemical and hand sweat resistance to your paint surface. Now, another thing that it mentions on the website, it says it's block fast. Now, I'm wondering whether block fast actually is relating and referring to actually tanning. So there's probably an element that is stopping things coming through it. And I will say to you, if you've got knots in wood, it does say treat knots accordingly with the correct knotting. Caparol do their own knotting solution, but do it twice. Don't just do it once, do it twice. Give it a couple of coats before you actually come on with your undercoat and then your top coats. It's also resistant to common household cleaning agents, which is good, and it's suitable for children's toys, and that is to the conforming to, is it DIN 713. So you can actually use it on kids' toys or furniture if you've got children about. You know what they're like for sucking things. Kids are kids, aren't they? Right, let's just go a little bit more into it. You can get this into mixed. You can get this in a matte finish. I've got the satin finish and it is tintable. Caparol have their tinting range of tinters, so you can tint it. So just check on that if they've got the colours that you want. We've mentioned about brush and rolling and spraying. We're good with that. We mentioned the interior use only, and I would say, like I'm using on Doris the door, and you can see there, that's what Doris's colour was, the base colour before. I went over it with half primer, which is in that Cornforth white. If you are going over other surfaces, particularly metal surfaces, if you've got zinc, steel, aluminium, copper, things like that, Caparol do recommend to use their Caparol adhesive primer. That can also be used on rigid PVC as well. So I think you can get the idea that this paint is suitable to go over most things, but if there is a question mark over the surface that you're actually going over, you will be having to use the correct primer stroke grip primers, undercoats for that surface that you're going over. Now, I've said it is a water-based product, and I haven't found any issues just washing that brush out with lukewarm water and a little bit of washing up liquid as well. That makes the brush, gotta sniff the bristle, makes the brush nice and clean. You know what the back of my t-shirt says, gotta sniff the bristle. So if I zoom back, it's on the back of there. You've seen it all before. I don't think there's much more I need to just mention to you. I know I repeat myself, but sometimes people fast forward through my videos because they don't want to hear all the information, and they might come across the information a bit later on. So what I'm going to be doing now, I'm going to be recoating this door up. What I've done, I've taped it all up so we can have sections that I can see what it was like as a base coat, what it was like as the first coat after the undercoat, and then also that area there I will leave because that is the first top coat. The rest of the door, albeit these areas there, won't be painted, but the rest of the door will have that second top coat on. Now the second top coat, don't forget, I'm going over it, is going over that Cornforth coloured white. Is going over that Cornforth coloured undercoat because I want to see what the opacity is like over that bit off-white colour. Pale grey? Yeah, I think let's call it pale grey. Before I start coating the door up, you know what yeah, if you're new to the channel, you probably won't know. I've got a box of tiles that are that colour. Now, when I'm coming up with new paints, coming to try new paints, I'm actually doing some sample pieces of tile. Now, my own fault, I coated up this tile with some tape across, not particularly high tack tape, but it's got a little bit of stick to it. I coated up one coat of the CapaFlow on all of it. Then I taped it up and did a second coat on half of it there. Now, I did leave it till it was dry and I came to take the tape off. Oh dear. I should have probably took the tape off straight away, or my tape is a little bit too searching and it has actually pulled it straight off the tile. Now, I did clean the tile down beforehand using methylated spirit. Use methylated spirit on surfaces like that because it evaporates away. So that is a clean surface. I'm not too worried that it is pulled off like that. I want to see what these are like in the future for, let's just say, scratch testing and also putting tape on to see if it pulls off. It pulls off straight away, but over a period of time, and I will say probably 7 days is a good curing time for paints to actually set up. Now, I would take it that normal touch dry is probably within an hour, depending on your conditions, and your recoat time is like what I'm finding. I'm probably 4 hours. But there's a difference between recoat time at 4 hours and actually cure time, which is your paint actually starting to set up and go harder. Now, with this being a PU based 1K product, it is probably a quicker curing time than I've probably had with the PU gloss, the PU satin before from Caparol. But I'm going to leave it 7 days just in case. If anybody knows what the proper curing time is for the well, it's a 1K PU product of the CapaFlow, please let me know in the comments below. This is new to me. I'm trying it for you to give you some information. Right, I'm back. I'm just going to bed my brush in. Just making sure the brush has just got a nice amount of paint on it. It has been washed out earlier, so that it's like a fresh brush. Now, if you don't know how to paint a door correctly, you would start with your mouldings, do your panel, go from one panel set there to another, all the way around, knocking off any fatty edges that go onto the main rails or stiles. But because I have already taped some of these up, what I'm going to be doing is just doing the moulding around, do the main panels, and then come to the rails. You'll get the idea. You'll get the idea. Application, when I was doing the first coat, was very nice. I didn't have any problems putting it on. There was an element that it was slightly pulling because we were going over a little bit of a dry surface of that half primer. But do you know what? Now I'm going back over the same product. It is flowing out a lot better. Now I'm going a little bit slower than I normally would just to get the feel of this paint on this moulding. I'm quite happy with that moulding. What I'm going to do is just show you, I just wipe the brush down so there's no more paint on there. And to get that fatty edge off, just with the side of the bristles, just knock any fatty edge off that's on the face of the door. Now that is how you stop a wet edge affecting the next lot of paint that will go around that moulding. You don't need to tape it. You knock the fatty edge off with the side of your brush. That will dry pretty quickly because there's not much paint on it, and you will come back to that with no problems whatsoever for blending back in. If I'm totally honest, I would not be surprised if the second coat doesn't give me total opacity coverage because of that undercoat being such a dark undercoat. I'm not looking at this paint to criticise it for opacity because I know I am actually going over a darker undercoat than normal. If I'd have gone in straight away with the half primer in white, it's a different kettle of fish because you're going over with, in effect, 3 lots of white over that darker colour. But I did want to see what it is actually like going over a darker undercoat or a darker coloured door. If you don't do it, but if you were going with the top coats straight onto a surface that is a different colour, I want to see what the opacity was like. Now, I prefer to have your undercoat's made up in your top coat colours, so I would say make sure that your top coat colour is matching, or the undercoat is matching your top coat as well. We have got a vast contrast difference there, but I'm not too worried about. Caparol paints are quite good on opacity, so if you were going in with the white on white, I think you would say a brilliant paint. Over these mouldings that are very critical for actual showing and grinning, I'm not overloading it with paint, but I'm putting enough on that I am going to get better coverage than trying to brush it out. So I'm just going around the edges, and then I'll come into the mouldings a little bit more, and then the panel. If you were using that little roller that I mentioned, just make sure you've got a roller that's going to lay it off as quick as you possibly can, or you've got a brush that you can lay off with quite quickly. I'm talking to you, so I'm a bit slower than normal. I would probably paint this door in around about 10 minutes if I was just on my own. But so far so good. I'd actually say the application is like putting, if those that really like an oil-based paint, they will say this is like putting on something that is a little bit thicker than probably water-based paints that they've applied before. Now you can see what I'm doing. I'm just putting a crow's nest pattern on it all over, wiping the brush down just quickly with the tips of the bristles, horizontal laying it off, and then vertical laying it off. Not putting any more paint on, just tips of the bristles, lay off, tips of the bristles round the side, and that will start to flow out. There's no more paint on the brush. Wipe off that fatty edge. Right, leave me to it. I'm going to come back when it's all dry. I'm going to finish off this door, and I will see you in a good number of hours when it's dry and we can actually have a look at it. But that first coat, it has got a very nice feel to it. Sheen level is probably at that 20 to 30% that I did say. Let's see what it's like when we've got a second coat on itself. Catch you later. Right, this is like, you blend out and blend back in, and I'm waiting hours for paint to dry. Now, this is now dry. I've had heaters on, I've had the cold air blower in as well. Don't forget, I said at the beginning, this paint, a 1K paint, actually dries from really the moisture that's in the air. Now, I'm feeling that as a satin finish, and you know what? That feels a really nice finish. Very tactile surface. I don't know, I'm not going to compare it to any other paint because I'm not doing that sort of video. But what I will say, application wise, the brush, it does wash out really nicely. I'm going to be looking at the opacity. You know that there's only one coat, that was the base, that's the undercoat, one coat and then 2 coats over that undercoat of half primer that's in a cornforth white. So let's just talk about that opacity. It's not bad. Another coat would probably make it body up perfectly, but I am asking extremes when I'm starting to go over undercoats that aren't the same as what the top coat is. So I would say rest assured, if we were going over a white undercoat of half primer or any of the correct primer undercoats that you need for the surface substrate that you're going over, I don't think you'd have any issues with doing 2 coats of this CapaFlow over the top. So I am seeing a little bit of grinning, I am seeing a little bit of lack of opacity, but we have gone over a colour that is quite dark. But let's just go back to that application. I've used a brush, it's been a softish brush, it's gone on nicely. I would say it would benefit from a splash of water to help you put it on, because it does seem to, I don't want to say pull, but it is quite a sticky paint. That's probably the wrong word to actually use for it, sticky, but I would say if it had got a splash of water to it, and I don't want to say add in too much, and I also don't want to say add a paint conditioner, because what with this being a 1K product, a PU, and it does say PU, a polyurethane 1K product, I don't know how a paint conditioner would take to it. So err on the side of caution if you are adding a paint conditioner to it, or if you are, do it for experimental purposes to start with, to know what it's like. We don't want to have that little bit of a problem with it. This shouldn't be, but I don't want to say put a paint conditioner. A splash of water would aid the application. Now the flow out, it is a CapaFlow. It is really good on the brush marks for the flowing out. I will say that Doris has had a lot of paint on her over the years now from me doing YouTube, so there is that slight texture there of brush marks building up over a door that is actually a textured wood grain door. So let's not look too critical at that either. The flow out of the paint's actually been pleasing. I'll say pleasing. I'm not noticing the biggest thing that's a gripe when water-based paints are actually going off too quickly is when you flow back out with your brush marks, with your laying off of your tips of your bristles, you get brush marks, and you can find that a section of the door is drying off a little bit too quick, which means that you'll get flashing from the paint that is still wet going into a paint that's tacking off. I'll use the word tacking off to try and put it in layman's terms, but actually I'm looking, you can't see it, the areas that I would be noticeably picking up on for areas that would flash, I'm not seeing that. So the flow out into itself is fine. Would I try it with a brush and a roller? Yes, I would do, but I'd be mindful that I think I'd have to put that splash of water to it, get it on, do a section at a time, and then lay it off as quick as you can. Or I would experiment and try on Doris, just using a roller, a nice, I don't know, microfiber 10mm, that nylon that they were saying in the instructions, and go with something that will give you a finish in one and see what it's like without actually needing to lay off. Because if you are, let's call it playing about with it, if you are applying it with a brush and then, if you are applying it with a roller and then actually laying it off, you are playing with that paint and it's going to be probably drying a bit too quick on you. But on the whole, the application has gone on well. The paint feels lovely. It is a harder wearing paint. It is a 1K paint. Now, people are going to say, well, what difference is it to PU satin that we all know already? Only time will tell. I need to know a little bit more about this. I'm going to say, give us some comments if you do know about this paint. I think this is one of these paints that is probably sprays better. I would like to try it with my HVLP. As I said, you can use it with airless as well, but be mindful that it's quite a lot, isn't it? 180, 200 bar. Nearly 3,000 psi when you convert it into English money, shall we say, is quite a high pressure ratio, but it probably sprays really well, and in the right environment you'll probably say this 1K product suits your application needs better than just the normal PU satin or gloss. Now, if you have fast forwarded through everything, this can be done in matte, and it can be done in satin, and you can have it tinted as well. So if you are here at the end, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. Those that are giving me, super thanks. Thank you very much. And I'm pointing there because there's some videos coming at the side. Please watch those. It supports the channel immensely, and I will see you on the next one. Again, this is a new paint to me, never tried before. I'm using it fresh, and I'm trying to get it out to you to make you aware of what is out there. And I'll say so far so good.